This podcast is supported by MIDI Health. Are you in midlife, feeling dismissed, unheard, or just plain tired of the old healthcare system? You're not alone. For too long, women's serious midlife health issues have been trivialized, ignored, and met with a just deal with it attitude. Many of us have been made to feel ashamed or forgotten. In fact, even today, 75% of women seeking care for menopause and perimenopause issues are left entirely untreated. But here's the powerful truth. It's time for a change. It's time for MIDI. MIDI is not just a healthcare provider. It's a women's telehealth clinic founded and supported by world-class leaders in women's health. What sets MIDI apart? We are the only women's telehealth brand covered by major insurance companies, making high-quality, expert care accessible and affordable for all women everywhere. Our clinicians provide one-on-one, face-to-face consultations where they truly listen to your unique needs. We offer a full range of holistic, data-driven solutions, from hormonal therapies and weight loss protocols to lifestyle coaching and preventive health guidance. This isn't a one-size-fits-all care. This is care uniquely tailored for you. At MIDI, you will join our patients who feel seen, heard, and prioritized. You will find that our mission is clear: to help all women thrive in midlife, giving them access to the health care they deserve. Because we believe midlife isn't the middle at all. It's just the beginning of your second act. Ready to feel your best and write your second act script? Visit joinmidi.com today to book your personalized, insurance-covered virtual visit. That's joinmidi.com. MIDI, the care women deserve.
Hello, it's your friendly neighborhood host, JT Wheatley here again, back for another episode of the History of Comic Books podcast, this time with the life of Marc Silvestri. Of all the Image founders who would be the center of controversy, Marc Silvestri would be the least expected. He was never flamboyant and always professional, and even left Marvel on good terms, to the point where he even returned to work for the company in the future. However, he and his studio Top Cow will be at the center of one of the biggest conflicts in Image Comics that pitted him against Rob Liefeld and ultimately got the latter expelled. And all Silvestri wanted to do was make comic books. Marc Silvestri was born in West Palm Beach, Florida on March 29, 1958. His family, who had Italian ancestry, later moved to Chicago, Illinois, where he was raised, along with his two much older brothers, him being 8 years younger than the middle child. As a kid, he was exposed to the comics by his cousin Fred, who was a collector. His early influences were Bernie Wrightson, whose work on Swamp Thing especially intrigued Silvestri, Jack Kirby, Frank Frazetta, and John Buscema. However, Silvestri originally didn't have ambitions to be a comic book artist, with even his first job being at a gym, which he admits was to get free membership. He was a sports lover, though ridiculed in high school for choosing football over basketball, despite being 6'7". He earned the nickname WH, or wasted height. His other love was sketching, and he would often doodle in classes, especially in math, which Silvestri claims he had no aptitude for. Despite his burgeoning artistic talent, comic books as a career were still not in the cards for Silvestri, originally believing he would be much better off either as an architect or a doctor, which he was discouraged to do later on, as, to paraphrase him, those jobs require smarts. Instead, he worked as a bouncer and as a health club worker before his cousin finally brought to his attention that DC Comics was doing a talent search in 1980 to 81, with one of the places being at a convention in Chicago in 1981. To get ready, Silvestri started drawing 6 months ahead of the time, putting together a portfolio of 4 to 5 pages of comic book story with his cousin Fred, who wrote it, along with a bunch of pinups. Despite his hard work, Silvestri had no confidence it would work out and reportedly wanted to leave the convention as soon as he got there. It looked like he might get his wish when the line to the tryouts were shut down due to too many people showing up, despite Silvestri literally being the next in line. Thankfully, his brother forced him to present his portfolio to Joe Orlando, who he found out was at his hotel, where they found out where his hotel room was, and Orlando was kind enough to look at his work. Silvestri was still nervous, believing he could try to get his job at the health club once he got back home. Instead, DC Comics called him and hired him to work next week. Marc Silvestri started his career at DC, doing anthology books at his House of Mystery, Ghost, and Weird War Tales. Silvestri called these stories great training grounds, as they were just 5 to 8 pages, and people rarely noticed if you screwed up. He also did work for First Comics, a popular third-party publisher during the 1980s. However, Silvestri soon felt stuck doing these stories and wanted to break out, which was when Marvel came calling. In the 1980s, Marvel was the holy grail for many comic book creators, as Marc Silvestri said, with him joking that DC was Marvel's farm team at the time. He was soon working there where he penciled Conan and began studying the work of John Buscema, a previous Conan artist who Marvel mandated many of the current artists emulate. Silvestri also developed a close relationship with Marvel editor Bob Harris. During this time, he did a couple of issues of Web of Spider-Man, which would be his first actual superhero work. Soon he was working on the Living Monolith comic, which then got Silvestri on Avengers, X-Men, and then led to his dream job, the Uncanny X-Men. Marc Silvestri joined the Uncanny X-Men in 1987 when Ann Nocchetti offered him the job, and next year he moved to California. He worked on X-Men quickly, and he soon became popular with other Marvel editors to work with. For Silvestri, like many other comic book artists and fans at the time, the X-Men was the dream job. Not just because it was the most popular, but because it had the highest sales, thus any artist that worked on it got the best royalty check. It also helped that the Uncanny X-Men went to 15 issues that year for the time, though the deadlines did affect his work, which Silvestri admits to. During his run, Silvestri was especially influenced by Neil Adams as he tried to imitate the lean, muscular look to his characters. Silvestri especially loved drawing Wolverine, who was his favorite comic book character to this day. This will eventually work out, as he was soon getting burnt out doing the Uncanny X-Men. Thankfully, Jim Lee was there to step in 1990, who reportedly asked Silvestri's blessing for which he agreed to, while Silvestri moved on to his favorite character's comic, Wolverine, for a 2-year stint. Marc Silvestri never considered moving the Wolverine from Uncanny X-Men a step down, as he loved the character and also gave him a chance to work with the writer Larry Hama. To date, Silvestri considers his run on Wolverine his best work at Marvel, as it started to experiment with creating a more noir, gritty style to the book, as he was getting influenced by Mike Mignola's art style, the future creator of Hellboy. Silvestri's art style also got fiercer to match the character. With him on Wolverine, Jim Lee and the Uncanny X-Men, and Will Spartasio on X-Factor, the three formed a kind of synergy on the X-Books, and in some ways was a precursor to Image Comics, especially when you added in Scott Williams to do the inking for all three. While Marc Silvestri was happy working at Marvel, he was looking for something new after 2 years on Wolverine, and that was when Todd McFarlane invited him to join Image. Silvestri liked the idea of starting a new company and owning his work. The infamous Sotheby's auction in 1992, in which his and other artists' original art was sold off without his say-so or a royalty check, helped convince him as well. Despite that, Silvestri wasn't dissatisfied with Marvel and made a point to leave on good terms, finishing his commitment to Wolverine. His last contracted issue was issue number 57, as he still had a good relationship with editor Bob Harris. In fact, his Marvel issue would be published right before his work for Image Comics, Cyberforce. The first meeting of Image founders, which was at the time excluded Will Spartasio, who was visiting his family in the Philippines and thus was never made a founder, was at Marc Silvestri's house, where the basic bylaws were formed, chief among them being that Image Comics owned only the name and the logo, while the creators owned their own work and could leave with it at any time. All 6 members were at the meeting: Rob Liefeld, Jim Valentino, Eric Larson, Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, and of course Silvestri, and they were all made equal partners with voting rights. And another important bylaw was that no partner could be expelled without 2 unanimous votes 2 weeks apart from the rest of them. Naturally, things were cordial at the time, and none expected to ever have to use that bylaw, but it would play an important role years later. At the new company, Marc Silvestri used his Cyberforce idea, which he originally developed at Marvel, but was distracted by his run on Wolverine. Now that he had his own studio, Top Cow, he decided to make it his comic to launch an Image. The concept was there was a team of mutants who were captured by the corporation Cyberdata, who experimented on them and enhanced their abilities with cybernetic implants. Cyberdata's plan was to make them into shock special hazardous operation cyborgs, with the intention of using them to take over the world. Instead, a number of them escaped, led by the 4-armed Striker, who had 3 cybernetic right arms that could be detached if necessary, forming the team Cyberforce to fight Cyberdata. The comic was inspired by Silvestri's love of superheroes and science fiction, with the intention of creating a mix. Like many of the Image comics, though, the series would face criticism for seemingly to copy their earlier work at Marvel, with Cyberforce members such as Cyblade and Ripclaw resembling X-Men characters like Psylocke and Wolverine. Despite this, the first issue sold 850,000 copies, numbers that all the Image founders were shocked by. They were hoping for 60 to 100,000 copies sold at best. Marc Silvestri would later join Ahmad Studios after he joined with Image Comics, moving to San Diego to do so. Silvestri especially liked working in the studio atmosphere, and to this day credits it as one of the best working experiences. He also loved the art style Image was developing with reflected surfaces and cross-hatching. Silvestri truly felt that they were breaking new rules with the company. He still looks fondly on those early issues of Cyberforce 2, and while he admits to their faults today, Silvestri also states he did the best work he could at the time. With the success of Cyberforce, Marc Silvestri launched a spin-off series, codenamed Strike Force, in 1994, a new team book that made its first appearance in 1993. The series focused on Stryker forming a separate team to take on missions the Cyberforce team wouldn't take, along with making money to fund the Cyberforce in general. Marc Silvestri co-wrote the first 9 issues with writer David Wohl, while Brandon Peterson provided the art. Steve Gerber, Billy Tan, and Michael Turner would fill in for the rest of the series, though it would only last till issue number 14. Silvestri was one of the few Image founders who took part in the Deathmate Company crossover with Valiant Comics, which he saw as an attempt to make headlines outside of Marvel and DC. Marc Silvestri provided the pencils for Deathmate Black, with his brother Eric also co-writing, along with the Deathmate epilogue. Unfortunately, the books were late, though did sell well, and the market soon crashed afterwards from many retailers going out of business from a large stock of unsold books, which carried the then crazy price tag of $4.95. Soon, Marc Silvestri formed his own studio, Top Cow, after leaving Homage, when he moved to from Hollywood. He didn't put out a lot of books like Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee, and limited any books to just Cyberforce at first. It didn't help that despite the high sales, the cost of making the books were skyrocketing due to the salaries of new talents demanding. With his new studio, though, Marc Silvestri did have an active talent search, as he can accommodate at least 15 to 20 artists. Landing such new names as David Finch, Billy Tan, and Michael Turner. However, Silvestri was always wary of how big Top Cow got, and would cut it down if he ever felt it got too big, as he always felt the company was more of a boutique operation. One comic that would instantly gain attention from this new slate of talent was Witchblade, which told the story of Sarah Pizzini, an NYPD homicide detective who inherits the Witchblade, an ancient gauntlet that bonds with its female host, giving them supernatural powers to fight evil. The series, which debuted in November of 1995, was co-created by Marc Silvestri with writers David Wohl and Brian Haberlin and artist Michael Turner, whose art was the main appeal of the series. Also of note was writer Christina Z, who wrote the first 39 issues of The Witchblade, which led her to be the first female to break in the Wizard's top 10 best-selling writers. Overall, Witchblade was an instant success at the time when the comic books were on a downturn, and would naturally lead to a spin-off, The Darkness. The Darkness was about Jackie Escobedo, who first appeared in Witchblade number 10 in November of 1996, a mafia hitman who inherits the Darkness power from his father when he turns 21, as it is passed on from father to son. The powers give him the ability to create anything he wants as long as it's not exposed to light, though one consequence of it is that if Jackie ever fathers his son, he would die as the power is passed on to his child. Co-created by writers David Wohl and Garth Ennis, along with Marc Silvestri, who provided the art, the series was another hit, especially with Ennis's trademark black humor. He had a lot of fun when Jackie realized he couldn't have sex or he would die, as the guy was a womanizer. Soon, Jackie Escobedo / The Darkness would engage in numerous battles against his counterpoint Angelus, along with fathering a child with Sarah Pizzini, the Witchblade bearer. Thankfully for him, it turned out to be a girl, Hope. It would also be revealed that the Witchblade is the result of the Darkness and Angelus joining at one point. The series was another hit from Top Cow and remains a popular character to this day. This success did bring attention from his fellow Image partners, particularly Rob Liefeld, who proposed his studio Extreme and Top Cow merge, thus making it larger than Jim Lee's Wildstorm, at the time Image's biggest studio. Reportedly, Liefeld was jealous of Lee's success, both at Image and being replaced in his Heroes Reborn books at Marvel. Silvestri politely declined, thus leading Liefeld and Extreme Studios to try to poach away Top Cow's top talent, notably Michael Turner, the artist in Witchblade. This angered Silvestri, and he and Top Cow briefly left Image in June of 1996 in protest, though he maintained his partnership rights. The latter came in handy, as the other Image partners decided to vote Rob Liefeld out that September. He would resign before the final vote could be had. The bylaws required 2 unanimous votes, and the first had already happened. Once Liefeld was gone, Top Cow and Marc Silvestri returned to Image, while Silvestri even served as CEO for a brief period of time. As for the immensely talented Michael Turner, whom Liefeld tried to bring to Extreme, he would go on to create Fathom at Top Cow in 1988 before moving to form his own studio, Aspen Comics, in 2003, while also working successfully as an artist for both Marvel and DC as well. Sadly, he passed away on June 27, 2008 from bone cancer at the far too young age of 37. Back in 1996, Marc Silvestri will return to Marvel to do Star Trek X-Men for both business and personal reasons, as there was talent involved in the project he wanted to work with, such as Brian Michael Bendis. Plus, Marvel was starting to make a comeback at the time, and since he had left the company on good terms, he was fine working with the company again. He would later have Top Cow do a Devil's Reign crossover with Marvel, which had Wolverine and the Witchblade appearing together, something Silvestri, as a comics books fan, knew would be appealing. The crossover dealt with Mephisto trying to steal the souls of the Top Cow universe so he could return to Marvel more powerful than ever. On top of Wolverine and Witchblade crossing over, it also featured Elektra and Ghost Rider for a 12-issue event. Back at Top Cow proper, another successful and highly acclaimed comic was Rising Stars in August of 1999, created by J. Michael Straczynski, who also created the classic science fiction TV show Babylon 5, about 113 children born in Peterson, Illinois, who all developed superpowers, ultimately being called Specials. The series dealt with how the world and these individuals dealt with powers in unique ways, as most didn't take the superhero route. For example, a special with psychic powers becomes a psychologist. The series was highly acclaimed, though hampered by uneven release schedules, something that's always seemed to plague Image Books, as the 24-issue run took till March of 2005 to complete. Plus, when the TV show Heroes was released in 2010, more than a few eagle-eyed comic book fans noticed some similarities, though neither the show's creator nor Rising Stars Straczynski believed it was intentional. While Marc Silvestri continued to make hit comics at Top Cow, he also kept his foot in other media, fearing the coming comic book crash. He realized much of the boom was fueled by a few people buying a lot of comic books for investment purposes. Thus, he signed a toy deal with Mattel and a cartoon deal with Fox. Originally, he was dismissive of Todd McFarlane starting his own toy and entertainment company, but when those deals fell through, Silvestri realized just how smart McFarlane was. He would later comment that Todd McFarlane was one of the smartest businessmen he ever met. Marc Silvestri would try personally to bring his talents to another medium when he developed the story and character designs for the game Fighting Force, which was released on the PlayStation, Nintendo 64, and Microsoft Windows in October of 1997. A 4-player beat-em-up in which you play as one of 4 characters to stop the evil Dr. Zeng from ending the world, the game received mostly favorable reviews, with many enjoying the gameplay if it was still generic. A sequel, Fighting Force 2, was released in 1999, this time focusing on just one character, Hawk Manson, and going for a more stealth approach. A third sequel was in the works, but ultimately was canceled. Silvestri and Top Cow would find success in other mediums, such as when Witchblade was adapted into a TV series for the TNT cable network on 2001. Starring Yancy Butler as Sarah Pazzini, it was a fairly faithful adaptation of the comic, with Marc Silvestri even helping do some of the writing. Despite being popular with fans and critics, the show was canceled in September of 2002, having run for 2 seasons and 23 episodes, reportedly due to Yancy Butler's alcohol problems. Witchblade would get a different kind of TV show in 2006 when it was adapted into an anime from Gonzo Entertainment, this time telling an original tale of a future Witchblade player, Masame Amama, who survived the Great Quake of Tokyo with a baby in her arms that she believes is her daughter, having lost her memory prior to the event. She returns to Tokyo 6 years later with her daughter, only to be entangled in a struggle between a large corporation and government agencies when it's discovered that the mysterious bracelet she wears is the Witchblade. While it would receive some controversy for using a new Japanese bearer over past Witchblade ones, it was confirmed this series does take place in the larger comic book's continuity. The series premiered on April 16, 2006, and ran until September 20th of 2006 for 24 episodes. Earlier that year in March, a Witchblade manga was produced by Kanechane, written by Yakuza Kabushineshi and artist Kazuza Sumoniti. This time about Tokiro Abakire, a Japanese high school student raised in a Buddhist convent who becomes the latest bearer of the Witchblade. While a new character, this series is set in the overall Witchblade continuity and will be released in the United States by Top Cow and Bandai from February of 2007 to February of 2008. Another Japanese spin-off was a novel by Sakutase Ikuawa, with art by Makuo Uno, who previously worked on the Witchblade anime series as a character designer and art director. Published in August of 2006, it told the story of Yuri Mizuzan, a sickly 15-year-old Okinawan girl who becomes the latest Witchblade bearer. The story is set between the manga and the anime, as Yuri is the successor to Akira from the manga series and precedes Masane in the anime as the wielding the Witchblade, and as a result is also part of the larger comic book continuity. Another successful venture for Top Cow and other mediums was the Darkness video game, which was produced by 2K Games for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 for release in June of 2007. A loose adaptation of the comic book, you do play as Jackie Estada as he learns to use his newly acquired darkness powers to take on his uncle Paulie Franchetti, who has him targeted for assassination. The game is a first-person shooter that allows you to use darkness powers by destroying street lamps and eating the hearts of enemies. The game received mostly favorable reviews, in large part due to its storytelling. The romance between Jackie and his girlfriend Jenny is a highlight, along with its unique gameplay, which has an immersive world that allows players to actually sit down and watch whole movies and TV shows on the television. For example, from To Kill a Mockingbird to the Street Fighter starring Sonny Chiba. Ultimately, the game sold over 1 million units worldwide, guaranteeing a sequel in The Darkness 2. Which was released on February 7, 2012 on the CPU, PlayStation 3, and Xbox 360, with Jackie Estada now the head of the Franchetti family. The game also received fairly favorable reviews, and many once again praised the storytelling, though the ending is considered a bit of a letdown. Despite its success, there are no current plans for a new game in the series. Marc Silvestri later moved to LA to re-energize his studio Top Cow and provided artists a creator share, which helped attract new talent. He also returned to work at Marvel again, penciling a run on the X-Men with Grant Morrison in 2004, along with writing covers for X-Men Deadly Genesis miniseries by Ed Brubaker and Trevor Hairsine in 2006. Silvestri then penciled the one-shot X-Men Messiah complex in 2007, which launched the X-Men event about the first child born with the X gene after the House of M event that wiped out all mutants, leading to a race by the X-Men and their various allies and enemies over who finds the child first. Silvestri later in 2009 penciled the Uncanny X-Men Dark Avengers one-shot as part of the Utopia crossover, which finds Norman Osborn attempting to create a Dark X-Men to take out the current X-Men team. Back in 2004, Silvestri would also illustrate the series Hunter Killer for Top Cow with writer Mark Waid about a group of hunter-killers that hunt for fellow Ultra Sapiens created by the government during the Cold War. In 2009, Marc Silvestri penciled all his original characters for the Image crossover event Image United, which was meant to be produced by the 6 remaining Image founders and written by new Image partner Robert Kirkman. While the first 3 issues sold well, they were poorly reviewed and the planned 6-issue miniseries was never finished. Of course, the price of developing new talent was when they got too big, they would leave Top Cow, whether it be Michael Turner or J. Michael Straczynski, but Silvestri was always pragmatic about it. After all, it's what he did with Marvel. He even understood Jim Lee selling Wildstorm to DC, and he thought it was a good decision for him. After all, Marc Silvestri continues to work with Marvel and DC while continuing to run Top Cow successfully thanks to its numerous popular properties. He still works at Image as well, being one of the many artists providing the variant covers for The Walking Dead number 100 on July 11, 2012. That October, he tried reviving Cyberforce in a cyberpunk setting, again through a Kickstarter campaign, which allowed the first 5 issues to be released for free. Today, Marc Silvestri remains the CEO of Top Cow Productions and partner in Image Comics, living with his wife Bridget, who he married back in 2001. Like the rest of his Image founders, he has yet to equal the success of his early Image days in the 1990s. Though his and Top Cow's continued success in comics and the other mediums, Silvestri remains an example of how creators can set out on their own, and of course, his role in the founding of Image cements his place in comic book history. I would like to thank the chief source for this episode, Image Comics, The Road to Independence by George Corey, which features a great interview on Marc Silvestri, a great read for any Image fan. And now it is November 20th, 2025, time for the favorite comic of the week. Batman Deadpool #1 by various comic book artists and writers. This is, of course, the continuation of the DC Marvel crossover that's been going on. Originally, they did a Deadpool Batman crossover issue, which was more of the Marvel writers and artists doing their takes, but this one is the DC artists doing it, and quite frankly, they do a much better job of it. The main story is Batman and Deadpool crossing over in a very fun and hilarious way, as apparently the both intergalactic entities of Marvel and DC apparently have a weird intergalactic romantic outing, and it results in Batman and Deadpool meeting, and it's hilarious and a lot of fun. It's written by Grant Morrison, drawn by Dan Mora, who, how that guy has free time, I have no idea, but he always delivers brilliant art every time, and he's in practically every book, seems like. But it's just a great book because even though Batman plays it straight, he has more. He almost has fun ribbing Deadpool just by finally calling out loud in a comic book how much he resembles Deathstroke, down to the fact that his name is Wade Wilson, not Slade Wilson, which is hilarious. Seeing this called out in public like this in a comic book, especially a major comic book like this. Grade A fun, and the rest of the stories are great. My personal favorite, a lot of people's are, is Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo doing a Laura Kinney Wolverine Nightwing crossover, which is great, especially since Tom Taylor, of course, has probably had the best takes on Nightwing and Laura Kinney in the last few years. And seeing him do a crossover with these two really plays off each other's strengths really great. And of course, Bruno Redondo's art's always fun. And also, there's some more fun little crossover stories. There's John Constantine and Doctor Strange meeting up, Harley Quinn and the Hulk. A lot of fun with that one. Just a lot of fun. This is a great crossover event. And hopefully, DC and Marvel will keep doing stuff like this more often. And quite frankly, hopefully DC does more of it, because Marvel was okay. They had one good story in their Marvel outing, which is the Captain America Wonder Woman crossover. But this one, every story was a banger, especially the lead story, and of course that Wolverine Nightwing one. So definitely check it out. And with that, we will conclude with this edition of the Classics. We'll join me again next week for another edition. And till then, go and enjoy some good comic book. And especially if you're going to pick out one of these crossover events, pick out the DC Batman Deadpool one, because that's the best one that's come out so far.